Hello, everyone. I'm Renee, the Practical Shaman, coming to you today from Whidbey Island, Washington.
And I'm Sandra Ingerman, and still in Santa Fe. Absolutely gorgeous day, and happy to welcome everybody today. And Renee is going to start us off today on a good topic for us to think about.
And just in case you're just tuning in now, our podcast is now going to be audio only. So we're inviting you to go over to your favorite place where you get your podcast and liking us there, subscribing there, so you get our updates. So when we drop a show, you'll hear about it. And also, those of you who follow us on YouTube, we'll be putting up a blank, nice nature scene to go along with our talking. But we're moving into the talking realm. And on that, today's talk is I wanted to start with this really moving experience I had last week in LA. I work in LA sometimes, and so I picked out these hotels that I like, and so I'm driving around the corner, and in my self-absorbed world, I almost drove up onto the curb because right across the street from this nice hotel that I've picked is a homeless encampment. And, they're set up, it's late in the afternoon, they're set up. I see a dog, I'm seeing this. And so the fact that I almost drove over the curb taught me that there might be something here for me. And so I took my food that I got because I'm on this diet and I have to make sure I have food every few hours. And I was looking out the window, and of course I'm looking down at the homeless encampment. And what I started to notice when I was sitting there watching out the window was how they were not 5 different people living on that street corner, but that they had a community of people living on the street. And I was watching in curiosity about how the woman at the end with the dog covered up at night so the dog was, safe and secure. And for some reason, I didn't need to eat the food that I had bought. So the next morning, I walked over when I was leaving, and I asked, would you like this takeout that I got yesterday that I didn't eat? And I went over there, thinking that I'm offering something. And the man turned around, put out his hand to me and said, "Hi, I'm Earl." And it's still moving me now that I'm bringing the encampment some food. And I never thought that, "Hi, I'm Earl." And Earl introduced himself to me and made himself more human. And then he took the food, and there was a package of salami and cheese that he turned around and handed to the guy in the wheelchair. They shared the food. And Sandra's told the story about a lot of times about how in other countries, when there's a banana or there's something to share, they break it apart and give it to each other. And we so forget that because we're in such a polarized time right now that we see blocks of people struggling, and we don't see them as other humans. I saw last week on Nextdoor, one of my other favorite places not to go, this woman said, "Oh, there's this man sitting on the bench, and if only that restaurant across the street didn't feed him, he'd move." And so I thought it's really important this time to talk about how we humanize and dehumanize other people who agree with us and don't agree with us.
Yeah, it's a really, really interesting topic. I just want to share 2 experiences around that. Back in the 80s, so we're going back. I feel like I actually feel like I really did live in a different generation, and I don't belong in this one. But back in the 80s, I used to teach a weekend workshop on extraction down at Martha Trolland's dance studio in Albuquerque. And I taught at the studio a lot. And it was right across from the soup kitchen. And all my workshops ended at 5. And so, the groups went home and we'd come back the next day. But in this one workshop that I would teach, we would end like around 4, and we would take a long dinner break, and we'd come back and do a ceremony on Saturday night of the workshop. So in one of my workshops, the group, I told the group the soup. Well, everybody knew the soup kitchen was across the street. It was pretty obvious. You had over 100 people lined up. But what my group did, without me saying a word to them, they went across the street and talked to each person and asked them about their life, introduced themselves to them, talked to them like a human being, and asked what led them to being homeless. And they came back and shared the most interesting stories. I realize we're in a different time, and a lot of people are being forced into homelessness right now. But back in the 80s, that was actually a choice people were making. They were making a choice. They came back from the war. They were abused. They found community. And this was a better way for them to live. And this was their choice. This was not something that they were being forced into. This was their choice. And that was very interesting to me. And then I was interviewed for the movie Crazy Wise. And the movie Crazy Wise was a brilliant movie about the difference between a shamanic initiation and schizophrenia. And you can get the movie. I don't know where, but you can. It's out there. You just have to search for it. I interviewed for 3 hours, and I'm in there for 15 seconds. But it was such an interesting 3 hours because I learned so much from the people who were making the movie. And they were making the movie about a homeless man following his life. He was very, very young. He was early 20s. And he became homeless after being in mental institution and after mental institution, not getting any help. But he found that he could sit down around a fire at some homeless place, and that they could talk their issues out with each other, and they healed each other. So he was actually able to get a job after being homeless for, I don't remember, it was so long ago, the story, but he got healed from being homeless and living in community where people took him as an individual and honored him as an individual instead of sick or deranged or unhinged or all the things that we call homeless people right now, or a lot of people. I know Renee you were trying to bring up seeing people as an individual, and this was just one example of it. But they're powerful examples of it, to see people who you would normally turn your backs on and find out that they have a very rich existence on certain levels.
Mm-hmm. And you've always been really good at that. I must say, there was a student that you had, and at some point I might not have had patience for, and you made that person more human for me. And from that experience, I started reaching out in a different way. And I think that this is one of the pitfalls of social media. People can present themselves any which way they want. And it's this false facade of who they are, what they're about, what struggles that they're having. Because personally, I don't share my struggles on social media. It's just not in line with my brand. Okay. But it doesn't necessarily mean that that's the truth of somebody who you follow or watch, or you don't know their story. I didn't know Earl's story. I just said, oh, I have some food. I'm going to, and then this is me. Then I got in the car, drove around the corner and got takeout. You know what I mean? It wasn't, and it didn't matter And I didn't feel like, oh, I'm telling you this, it makes me a better person. I'm telling you this because I felt like a real schmo that I didn't see Earl until Earl stuck out his hand and said, "Hi, I'm a person. I see a problem." And I think that's going on. I mean, and we're, this is probably going to come out right before the election of all things. We're seeing people as a thing and not as somebody with a mother, with a child, with, two kids and, no car in the driveway. And we're clumping people into ideologies that have nothing to do with who they are, how they show up in the world, and that they're good people. And I think it's a real cry for us as shamans, as healers, as, spiritual seekers, that we can do better.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Learning people's stories. And I just, oh my God, in my 71 years of life, I have befriended people that nobody would ever befriend. And people always judged me and wondered why I did it. And, and they, they were like the greatest people in my life who helped me keep going on and who walked with me. I befriended people nobody. I see clients nobody will take. And they're some of the richest, rich meaning not materially, some of the richest people that I've actually had the honor to work with because of where life has taken them. The depth, one of our shows we did was going into your inner world to find safety. And let me tell you, these people like Earl, they have a deep inner world, to be able to walk up to somebody like Renee and say, "Hi, my name is Earl," instead of just taking the food. That's a person who has a deep inner world.
And it moved me. And so if you're sitting on the bylines watching people and making judgments of them, and it's not moving you, it's just, one of my friends, it happens to be a chiropractor, right? And somebody made a comment about, hey, I'm looking for a good recommendation of an affordable chiropractor, right? They asked for recommendations for a chiropractor, and yet all of the comments below were like, you shouldn't go to chiropractors. It's like we're making arguments where no argument is needed. If you don't have a good recommendation for a chiropractor, keep your mouth shut. They weren't talking to you.
Right.
I mean, and I don't know where we've gotten this permission to hide behind our avatars and just shout out obscenities at the world when people really need, "Hi, I'm Earl," a hand. They need, they need some sustenance. They need some food. And we've, if one thing that I could liken that Sandra and I could continue to do is bring humanity back to the table here.
Yeah, and I actually don't believe that we can bring humanity back to the table until people love themselves. Because the comments that we're seeing on social media with people hiding behind their avatars, those are people who hate themselves. And they hate themselves so much that they want you to feel bad about yourself. They want you to feel as bad about yourself as they feel about themselves. And so, really, what Renee and I have been sharing for 6 years, and we will continue to weave that into all of our conversations, is until you learn how to love yourself, you're always looking out of somebody else's eyes, and never seeing the Earl, and you're never seeing the individual. You're just seeing how much you hate yourself.
And that's a hard mirror to be looking into. I mean, I looked into that. And the other part about it is that there's levels. I like myself so much I can look in the mirror now and say, hey, I love you. I can look in the mirror and see myself and love myself. And yet there's always that deeper level. And that's what spiritual seeking is about, is being able to go, for me, and I don't know for Sandra, but for me, it's always able to, like, the surprises of last year when you get stopped in your track. Oh, I went on this walk and I realized that I wasn't available to the people that I love most in the world because there was some kind of facade that I was holding still, that I couldn't reveal that next part of myself. Dare I be exposed? And so it required me to go deeper and ask, well, how could we have a better conversation around this? We're not fully evolved ever, because I think if we were fully evolved, we would just, move on. But how do we keep evolving ourselves to be the best versions of ourselves that we can be?
Absolutely. I think I think that's the point of what we're all being asked to do right now. And I think that whether people are being put into homeless situations right now, or whether people are being put into health situations right now, or whether people are losing finances right now, there's a reason we're being called. We're being called to stop. Something's not right. And
Mm-hmm.
actually, our own beings are not supporting what's happening right now. We're stopping a lot of anything positive happening because we're pushing ourselves back to deal with certain things before we can move forward. So it's a really important time for all of us. And as Renee's saying, the power of seeing people as individuals and not seeing people as bots on social media. I feel like I'm just like a bot, seen as a bot. You start to feel like, does anybody know that you're actually a human? I
I,
I start to wonder sometimes, and it's not a good feeling. And I know that we're doing the best we can. And that's what my husband and I just keep saying. We just keep reminding ourselves that we're doing the best we can. And so I'm not judging anybody, just wondering, asking the question, how would our lives change if we looked at what Renee is really sharing, really taking that in of not putting people in archetypes, but seeing people as individuals, as people with a heart, a beating heart that needs to be cared for, just like you want to be cared for.
what a great place for this one to end, I believe. Um, yeah, we're going to keep talking because we still have more to talk about, as I see when we sit down and have a conversation. And I hope you think that too, and that you subscribe and, maybe share this. One thing that we see is that we get to a plateau and then we need you to share this. If you think what we're saying is important, share it to 5 of your friends. Like it on the places where we're suggesting, and then come over to our Facebook group. And I am really getting tired lately. Can I just tell you what I'm getting tired of? I'm getting tired of these AI thoughts in our group, because I know that they're coming from AI, because people can't be that prolific every single day. I mean, I'd really rather have a couple sentences about how you're feeling today than telling me how I'm supposed to feel, what I'm supposed to do, and all of these things in order to make my life. I would much rather say, oh, today I was out in the garden, covering up the yard with the mulch to cover it for this winter, and I got this great insight. It just is so much better than, I can't even get through most of them.
Yeah, no, I swear, Renee, I'm spending about 10 minutes on Facebook and I'm on 5 different Facebook pages. but I'm only looking at what's touching my heart. And
Mm-hmm.
you have to talk from your heart to be touched. And I have another page, Shamans of Gardeners of Energy. And when I first started it, I said to the group, why don't we look at this? And I was really touched when somebody from Japan wrote back and she said, you're creating community.
Mm-hmm.
It feels so good to me. And we can do that on the Shaman's Cave.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of, I had this journey, what do you think?
Mm-hmm.
What do you do in these situations? I had this journey, and this is the insight I got. I just wanted to share it.
Mm-hmm.
If we could share more from our hearts, we'd actually, the Shaman's Cave is a huge group.
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine if we all shared from our hearts? We'd actually feel like we're in a community of an
Right.
amazing amount of people. And that is a reflection of feeling safe inside of our bodies. And
Mm-hmm.
once we can do that, we can be in community and we can walk together.
I like that. Let's make that as a vision that we're going to hold, that people are going to come over and share from their heart instead of their bots, and really shorten them. Like nobody has time to read. They'll buy your book, you know, buy my book. Speaking of books, Sandra and I were just talking about that we're going to share some of our books and some of our readings, and then have a conversation, not like a little book study between us, and invite you into being part of those as we go, and hearing your feedback about some of the chapters and the sections we're going to pick out. So stay with us. I guess this is season 7. I don't know.
Yeah, we're going into season 7.
So stay with us, and we're happy to be here with you.
Yeah, blessings, everyone.